And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Toll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we have, again, a pile of interesting and very diverse stories to talk about this week from just about every corner of the electric micromobility world. We've got new electric bikes launched. Velotric's got something coming. We're checking out this interesting plan from a Yamaha-created company to eliminate e-bike charging forever. You're going to want to stick around for that. We got in a super cheap $390 electric bike from China. Let's see what actually came out of the box. Seth tested out one of Meepo's newest electric skateboards, and so we're going to hear how that went. Looks like a pretty powerful thing in a small package, so I'm excited to hear about that one. We heard some unfortunate news about one of the coolest electric bike cars, unfortunately shuttering its doors. And then we're going to move into some bigger types of vehicles with Royal Enfield's first electric motorcycle coming early next year. And we'll finish it off with some interesting news about the first profitable electric dirt bike company. So where are we starting with here, Seth?
All right. Velotric launches its first full suspension fat tire electric bike.
This is a big deal because, sure, we've seen a lot of interesting e-bikes from Velotric over the last few years. I think it was around 2021 or 2022 I started reviewing their bikes, and they were always, nice entries. Every year they got better and better, but building a hardtail e-bike is it's not that hard if we're being honest, right? Like a rigid frame is not a big deal. The fork is made by fork makers, so there's not that much to it. When you move to full suspension, things get a lot more complicated. And so this is an indication that Velotric is really upping their game by going with their first full suspension bike. Now the Nomad 2X here is it's a big bike. Like don't get me wrong, this is not a mountain bike. This is like a adventure, all-terrain bike. It's got 26 by 4-inch fat tires. That full suspension only adds to the fatness of the bike in terms of how comfortable this is going to ride. You got 4 inches of tire under you, then you've got over 4 inches of rear travel. I think it's it's 80 millimeters. So that's just over 3 inches of rear travel. The front travel is 120 millimeters, so it's almost 5 inches. That's a lot of squish under you in one bike. Now this is an 80-pound bike, so remember this is a big boy. You're not going to throw this over your shoulder like a mountain bike and bring it up a few stairs. But it's a very impressive entry. It's got a 750 watt nominally rated motor, though they say it's 1400 watts of peak power. I believe the torque is something like 105 newton meters. So like really, really impressive torque on that one. The drivetrain, it's an 8-speed. I think it's an Acera, if I'm not mistaken, which is like a step up from the lowest level of derailleurs, but it's not the nicest one out there. They do, of course, have to keep the price somewhat reasonable. It is priced at $24.99, so it's a bit up there, but full suspension e-bikes are always more expensive, not just because you're paying for the suspension, but the frame requires a lot more design to go into it. It's a lot more complicated, so this is not just like a cookie cutter type bike. And then because it's a Velotric, it has what we know and love and have come to expect from Velotric, which is that they always include that Apple Find My tracking, which personally I really, really like, especially as the bike gets more expensive. Just being able to find it. If you lose it in a city, if you lose it in the woods, the Apple Find My is not going to help you. But most people are keeping these fat bikes on asphalt most of the time anyway, it seems. It's also got their UL listed batteries. Not just like UL compliant, but Velotric actually goes to Underwriter Laboratories, so they're UL listed. It's got the holographic sticker and everything. And their batteries are even IPX7 rated, so you can submerge them, like, you can toss it in the swimming pool, and it's going to be fine. Like a year ago or something, I actually did that. I did like a dunk test on their batteries, and yeah, like dunked it in water, took it out, put it in the bike, and rode off. So really, really impressive, the waterproofing and the UL certification they've got on these bikes. We don't have one yet. We're supposed to be getting one in soon, so I'm very excited to be testing this. But from what I can see, it's going to be a pretty interesting bike. It's just very powerful, probably overbuilt for what most people are going to use it for, but that's what you want in an e-bike, right? Like you don't want it underbuilt. So very exciting to see this one coming. What do you think of this type of e-bike, Seth?
Yeah, I think you characterized it well. Seems like a little bit of excess in every way. Obviously, 80 pounds, big 4-inch, 26-inch tires. What do we know about the motor and the controller? Is that going to be enough? Is there going to be enough power to move this thing along in a expeditious way?
Yeah, but I don't know what current the controller is using. They claim 1400 watts peak, so I have to imagine it's going to be a pretty high current rating. Would be interesting to pop that open when we do get it. But the performance specs on this thing, I mean, they say it can tow 1,000 pounds. Like normally bikes don't come with tow ratings, so that
Yeah,
already tells you something.
a thousand
Um,
pounds. Okay.
yeah, and I even took their Discover, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the Discover 2 when they launched it about a year ago, and they claimed it had a 400-pound tow rating. And so my sister has a Chevy Silverado truck, and I
Hmm.
connected it to the bumper of her truck, and I very slowly towed that with the bike. So this has over twice the tow rating, so I imagine it's going to be a pretty torquey ride.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, we see the rack on the back. It looks like kind of an add-on versus like something that would be welded on. I mean, the for those listening, there's a guy in a picture with like a bunch of like it looks like tent type stuff in the back. With something this big and burly, I wonder if they missed an opportunity to have a an extra seat in the back kind of rack or something just a little bit more in line with everything else that seems very burly on this.
Yeah, though I think there are advantages to the sort of bolt-on rack as well. That like
Hmm.
if you're really, really, doing some serious off-roading, maybe you don't want the rack, so you can take it off.
It's
Or if
true.
you wreck and you bend it, you can replace it. The other thing is that racks are usually pretty difficult on full suspension bikes because
Right.
they can't tie into where the seat post is, and so or the seat tube rather. And so the fact that they've got one, I think, is already great. Now it does have a really high weight rating on the rear rack. I think it's 120 pounds.
Oh
So
wow.
ostensibly, like you were saying, passenger seat or something that would be interesting. But because this is full suspension, like I'm just picturing in my mind how that would work. Like if I'm the rear passenger, is my chest like going into the rider if I'm sitting back there?
Yeah.
So yeah,
That
some interesting things to work out with the full suspension rear rack bikes. I think that's part of why they're so rare in the industry.
yeah. I mean that would be problematic, but with a 120-pound rating, on a road, you wouldn't want to go off roading with a passenger, obviously, but on a smooth road, I think it would probably be reasonable. Um,
Yeah.
but it is, with the rear suspension, it's a question. All right, let's move on. All right, next up, this Yamaha-backed plan hopes to eliminate electric bicycle charging forever. I have a lot of feelings about this, so let's see what we got.
This is a strange concept. I mean, it's not terribly innovative in and of itself. We're talking about essentially e-bike battery swapping here. So there's this startup that was built by Yamaha. It's called AnyRing, and their goal is to create a e-bike battery subscription service. Sort of like, if you know Gogoro with scooters, where you have the e-bike but you don't own the battery and you just swap it. And then now they are teaming up with Swabi, which is a European-based battery swapping company that is also sort of like Gogoro. Though if you think of Gogoro as like an analogy for Apple in the micromobility space, Swabi is more like Android in that
Hmm.
they don't make their own batteries and they sort of accept any battery that wants to work with them. So if you come to Swabi and you're like, hey, like I'm new or I'm I don't know, Yamaha or I'm Royal Enfield or any company that's like making an electric motorcycle, they can help design their cabinet to fit your battery. So in this case, Swabi and AnyRing have teamed up to do battery swapping for electric bicycles as opposed to electric scooters and motorcycles, which is normally what Swabi works with. And so the goal here is to basically provide a solution for people who don't want to have to charge their e-bike or who are not able to. So that could be, delivery riders who all day, they're working 10-hour shift or something. You're not going to do that on a single e-bike battery. So instead of needing to carry multiple batteries or stop and charge for a few hours, you just roll up to a swapping station and swap in your electric bicycle battery. Or it could be folks who live, in the fourth floor of a 4-story walk up. They don't want to carry their battery up every day to charge it, or their building doesn't allow them to charge an e-bike battery inside. So instead, they just want to swap their battery. Or just folks who are concerned about the potential dangers of charging a battery indoors. Now, again, we like to mention that generally speaking, it's quite safe. While there are certainly cases of electric bicycle battery fires reported in the media, it's a very small percentage, but it is something to be aware of. And there are a lot of people that would prefer not to have to charge at home. So I see several use cases for this, but at the same time, the sort of the convenience of an e-bike is that the battery is so small that you can take it with you, you can charge it wherever. Charging costs like literally a few dollars a year for most people. I think generally it's about 25 cents per 100 miles, depending on your efficiency of your e-bike. So it's simple, it's cheap, you don't need a subscription for anything. So this does add in a little bit of complexity and cost that doesn't normally come with the idea of owning an e-bike. There are obviously pros and cons to any system, and this is pretty neat in that it solves some of those problems people might have. But to me, it seems like a fairly niche solution. I don't know. What do you think, Seth?
Yeah, niche is a nice way to say what we're probably both thinking, which is this isn't the solution that we're asking for, I guess. Yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, this could have secondary effects that it kind of standardizes batteries a little bit more. Like, hey, if you want your batteries to work in our swap stations, you have to conform to, this interface and this voltage and this amperage, and maybe that would be a good thing. Like if you could, if this standardized battery interfaces and voltages and stuff. But like, I just don't see this as the solution that most e-bike. I mean, the nice thing about an e-bike is that like if you can put it in a swap station, you can also carry it up to your apartment, and your apartment's going to be on your route, and you don't really need to necessarily find a swap. Like, I mean, these are good for like homeless people, or people who don't have power in their homes, I guess. But like, it doesn't seem like it makes a ton of sense for the bike size batteries.
Yeah. And I
Bigger
think
ones.
I think the root thing that you were talking about is more important than a lot of people realize, because I have personal experience with this. I use a GoGo scooter as like my daily driver or rider, and we used to have, I think, 12 or 14 swap stations in my city. Now we have two because the partnership they had with the local gas station fell apart, so there's only two swap stations left. Fortunately, there's one about a mile from my apartment, but still, like, if most of my trips are like 2 or 3 miles, so going a mile out of my way is like increasing my trip by like 30 to 50%, and it is a bit frustrating sometimes. So if you're doing battery swapping, that's great, but you have to have enough like geographic penetration to make it convenient. Otherwise, it's just like you're hunting for a gas station kind of effect.
Yeah, and for the bike form factor, I just don't see like if you're taking your battery out of your bike already to do the swap station, you're just going to take it up to your apartment, which is on your route already, or your house, or wherever you live. Like, I don't know. I don't see it.
Yeah, I honestly think the delivery rider use is sort of the best case for battery
Yeah,
swapping, just because it does recharging in 30 seconds kind of idea. That's where I
right.
think the real advantages lie, and I
That's true.
I think that delivery riders, this market is only going to grow and grow as people realize how convenient it is, and this concept expands to more cities.
Yep. Niche. You're right. All right, let's move on here. My back button works. Ooh, I bought a $390 electric bicycle directly from China. Here's what showed up.
To answer the first question, I think most people are going to have this was pre-tariff, so $390 was really a $390 e-bike. Though I guess technically that it had the 25% tariffs from like 2018 or whenever those were initiated, but not the higher ones. But this is, if you remember, I backed an Indiegogo campaign. I wrote an article about. I just bought this crazy weird e-bike from China. I do not recommend it. And then it was sort of a test to see what happens. Figured I'd put a little skin in the game and we'd have some fun. Everyone could live vicarious through me. Um, no one was more surprised than me when it showed up, and despite being late, was actually kind of a neat little e-bike. Now it's called the Mihogo Mini, and it definitely is small. It's got 12-inch wheels. It feels more like a seated scooter, though it is a legitimate legal e-bike. It's got pedals. If the battery were to die, you could pedal at home, which I did have to do. I let it die on purpose because I wanted to see, like, can I really pedal this as a bike? I will say it's with 12-inch wheels and a single speed setup. By the time you get to 10 miles an hour, your feet are spinning very fast. So you're not going to ride this thing very quickly, but it is doable. But as an e-bike, it's really, honestly, surprisingly good for $390. It's fairly powerful. They say 350 watts, but it got me to 20 miles an hour just fine. Now I was testing this in a very flat city, so I don't know how it will do on hills, but for any flat area, it's certainly quite peppy. It's got a color screen. You can connect it to the app, and it will even give you sort of a primitive turn-by-turn directions on the screen with arrows blinking as you get to your turns. It's got this cool frame, which is actually the thing that attracted me to it in the first place, was that it's got this sort of wishbone frame where there's this bag that sits in the middle of it, and as you're riding, you can just like reach down between your knees and like grab stuff. So I got a water bottle in there. You can reach down and
Got a
grab it.
sandwich.
Yeah, you get your snacks while you're riding. It's got a huge battery for what it is. It's 48 volts, 16, 17 amp hours, something like that. So, weirdly big battery for such a small bike. The handlebars fold down, so it's quite compact if you're trying to get it like into that sort of tunnel in the middle of an SUV, or sideways in the back, or down the middle of a minivan. Or even stick it under like a desk at work, with the handlebars folding down. It's quite compact. It does have front suspension, but I would say barely in that.
Yeah.
It has to be like, I don't know, 25 millimeters of suspension. Like I could certainly bottom it out, and I'm not a huge guy, so don't count on it being terribly comfortable. But for what you pay, like it was, like they don't owe me anything. I got more than I paid for. Now, because I backed the Indiegogo, that comes with a lot of risk for the early adopters. I got that great Indiegogo price. Now I think it's something like 500 or 550. And ironically, when I first posted this, I think they probably got a rush of orders or something, because within a day they had jacked the price up to like $800.
Oh
Because I
wow.
think they were something like, oh, I don't know why we're selling all these things, but like demand's up, we got to raise that price.
Yeah.
But then they dropped it back down after a few days. So I think it's still at like 500 something, which isn't as great a deal as the 390 that really caught my eye. But
Yep.
still, like if you just need something small, light, I think it's barely 40 pounds, compact, which is really the biggest selling point here. Even at $500, like it does the job. It's more comfortable than a standing scooter. And legitimately you could ride it as a bicycle if you ever needed to, and it does work that way. So I'm like pleased as punched with this weird little thing.
Yeah, it looks like something that Swagtron would sell or something, like an EB.5 or something.
Yeah, though I have to say, like, it felt nicer than a
Oh,
Swagtron level. Yeah, like it felt weirdly good. I mean, it has options for like racks and all sorts of things. It's better than it has any right to be.
yeah, and I have to say, like, I don't think I've seen this particular design, and it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, not just the bag, but like the battery, and it seems like um, the weight distribution's good, and obviously it's inexpensive to produce, and it's easy to, very portable. Sounds like it rode pretty well, like good design.
Yeah, I'm surprised we don't see it more. The closest I've ever seen was several years ago. Yamaha Power Assist bikes had a sort of wishbone style frame, and it was a mountain bike. It was actually full suspension, and the suspension was mounted between the two pieces. And it had some advantages, especially for full suspension, to hide some of the mechanics between the frame rails instead of having to work around them. So I'm surprised we don't see this more also.
How long until Swagtron has one of these?
Yeah, really, it's just waiting for a Swagtron sticker.
Right. Let's see if it exists yet. I mean, it's been how long since the post?
Yeah, a couple of weeks. So that Indiegogo was like a year ago. So and I will say it
Oh,
took, longer. They said it would arrive in like 2 months. That was the one where I was like, if this shows up at the time that they say, I will ride it around in a pink tutu. And it definitely showed up like 8 months later.
looks like Swagtron might be in some sort of uh,
Uh-oh.
receivership situation. Might want to look into that. We're putting final touches on the new Swagtron experience. Okay,
Oh yeah.
interesting. Anyway,
Yeah, there might be
that
the
looks like a
first.
cool bike. What are you going to do with it? Is it part of your arsenal now? Or are you
Yeah, yeah, it's in my sister's garage. It's like, make a great sort of second e-bike, loaner e-bike, you have friends over.
yeah,
Um, it's
leave it
like
in the
it's
trunk of
also
your
just weirdly
car kind
fun.
of thing?
Y-
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, weird little thing.
Let's move on here. It is 21. All right, this one's mine. The Meepo Flow, a gorgeous all-purpose cruising e-skateboard for summer fun. I got this a couple weeks ago. Um, I've had a boosted Mini X for a few years, and that's just kind of slowly fallen apart on me. Not fallen apart
Oh no.
physically, but like my experience, like, obviously boosted went out of business, so the app was no longer supported, and then it disappeared from the App Store. And there was a secondary app that it was called Ride that was around for a while that allowed you to control the boosted board a little bit. I mean, you control it from the controller, so like it didn't instantly stop working when the app disappeared, but you you couldn't adjust it. So that complication kind of scarred me a little bit. Like, well, why do I even have an app, right? So this Meepo board basically comes in a box, like ready to go with a controller. Don't have to connect it to an app. You basically push the button on the bottom of the skateboard. I think it was like 50% charged. You push a button on the controller and you're ready to go. Like you start out in level one, and level one is a very like smooth acceleration. Now I will say that the trucks came in really tight, and that's great for avoiding speed wobbles. If you're going fast, you don't want too loose of a front and rear trucks, so that you have some stability. But I'm not a fast, like I think the top speed on this is 32 miles per hour. I probably went over 20 miles per hour once or twice. Um, yeah, 32 miles per hour. So, different people will have different use cases. So my 13-year-old son, Mike, I think you know this, is a competitive skateboarder. So pretty steep incline, and he was just flying up hills, which is something fun to see on skateboards. Now, obviously, he doesn't weigh a ton, but super fun to see him using that. I didn't feel comfortable going much over 20 miles per hour,
No
but
jumps.
yeah. So
No
he was
jumps.
just flying down the road, double lane road, and
Yeah.
he loves this thing. It's like a lot more fun than I was having on it. I was kind of just like cruising around the riverfront walk, where like you'd see here, he even gets in a low stance, and I think he got up to like 30 miles per hour here. So I don't know if that's
Wow.
good parenting or not, but he certainly enjoyed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I
And
know how you
then
feel about that because, like, for me, so I like electric skateboards, but to me, it's not one of those things where like faster is more fun. There are other things, e-bikes, my live wire, other things like faster, definitely more fun. Electric skateboards above 20, 25 is like my limit for feeling not scared anymore.
right, yeah, there's definitely a point at which you're not feeling great about the situation. So mine was 20 miles per hour. This was on level 1. This is if you're watching at the local waterfront park. There's a trail, and it was kind of crowded that day. I think it was Mother's Day or something. And but it's just a super nice experience. It's very easy, not overly complicated. I think one of the mistakes Boosted made was they just made it very complicated. You have to connect up the app and you have to sync up everything. This is just like, I don't even know how it connects. Like, it might be Bluetooth, it might be something else, might be some other kind of communicate. I don't know. I don't care. Like, I just turned it on, it works. So yeah, and it's super easy at level 1. Like, this is me going at like level 1 or level 2. I think I got up to like 15 miles per hour, which is fine. And then once you get really comfortable with it, you start visiting the other levels. I tried up to level 3. Level 3 scared the crap out of me, and level 4 would just send the board like out from under me. So I think it's good for all rider types. What was interesting is, like, this board has huge wheels. I don't know if you can tell. They're like 105 millimeters, I think.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, it's almost like kind of like an off-road kind of situation. But I was just so impressed by like the way that it was just very simple. And I don't know if it took a lot of engineering to make the acceleration very smooth and the deceleration very smooth. But my son was also like taking it downhill and using the regen to slow himself down. So I mean, it has a lot of pluses. Just the
Yeah.
simplicity of it all.
Well, I think what really speaks well about this board is that both you as a fairly conservative rider and your son as a fairly like impressive rider were both able to use it quite comfortably. So I think that
Yeah,
says a lot.
yeah, and it's it's going to be like a fun toy for us for a long time. Um, the like we talk about this quite a bit, but it has some version of the ST3 connector, which, like, my God, if this was USB-C, it would be so easy to like hook up external batteries or even charge the controller from it or charge your laptop from it. I mean, it's a big battery. It's a 362 watt hour, which is big on a skateboard. I don't know, like, it says the motors were 2 times 2.5 kilowatt. Is that even possible? There's a 5 kilowatt skateboard?
Yeah, so with those little outrunner motors, they can be insanely high power for the size. Like the power density is crazy on those things. What you lose often is the cooling that you get with like bigger, chunkier e-bike motors.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these motors come from the RC world, so they're used to being cooled by like rotor wash.
Right.
So sometimes you have issues in skateboards and other things where they don't get the same kind of like active, literally like rotor wash cooling, but they are incredibly power dense.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I didn't try going up a big hill for a long period of time, and that's just not a typical skateboard use case. Like, you're just not gonna use full power for a long period of time. But I did see, so I read a bunch of forums about this um, board, and some people did mention that they did burn through the belts a little bit quicker than they were expecting. And it did come with 2 extra belts, and you can get them on Amazon. I think they're like, I don't know, $6 or $7 each. So not a big issue. I think it's pretty simple to replace the belts, but I just wonder if there was a way to better, like, put the belts in an encasement maybe, instead of having, stones and sticks come up and hit the belt drive or something. But
Yeah. I guess
got
the
to keep
nice
that
thing
price
is with
down.
yeah. And with 2 motors, you have some redundancy. So like if you literally lose a belt partway through a ride, you can limp home on one wheel or
Yep.
one drive wheel. So
Yep.
that's good.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I was just like, I'd kind of given up. Like, I had that boosted mini for a while, and I would use that every once in a while, and I'd just be like, this is too scary, or, you don't have a wide stance on a park size skateboard. So acceleration and deceleration, you have to be a little bit more careful on. But this is a kind of a Goldilocks board where it's not a long board, so you're not, you're it's somewhat portable, but it's not a skateboard, like a park board. So you can have a wide enough stance that you can take that acceleration pretty well. So I don't know. I really like this board. I think it'll make people pretty happy.
Yeah, and the fact that you don't need an app to use it is huge in my opinion. Like I know I sound like a bit of an old fogey here, but I hate when apps are first of all required. That just like annoys me to no end. But in my
Yeah.
opinion, it should first of all only be an optional thing, and then it should only be there if it adds something useful to the experience. So many companies have an app for an app's sake. And like right now I'm reviewing the new InMotion V9 electric unicycle, or I'm trying to, but I can't get
Mhm.
the thing started because it won't pair with the app. And like I'm going back and forth with support. They're being super helpful. Of course, I'm a reviewer, so like no one's going to get better support than I am.
Right.
But like I can't get the thing working because it will not successfully pair and like activate itself with the app. And so, if it was an addition thing, that's fine. But if you need the app to be able to use the product, that just drives me up a wall.
Yeah, and especially when they don't add too much to the equation. And I don't know if Meepo was just like, hey, let's simplify this situation. I think more likely they were just like, hey, let's make this on the cheap, not on the cheap like bad components, but like let's not
It's not
waste
add
time with
anything that's not needed. Yeah.
exactly. So for that, I'm pretty thankful. I really like this board. I like the experience. So
Yeah, Meepo's always struck me as like, the very reasonable, good quality and performance for what you pay company.
yeah, I think I'm gonna try to get a because I've never tried an off-road board. I think I'm gonna try to get one of those next.
Oh, you absolutely should. Even
Yeah.
just for like just riding them on road, it's
Hmm.
so much nicer than, like even
Really?
these like 105, 110 millimeter wheels. When you put those like 6-inch tires, it's so nice. Like you can go over that curb there and just like hop down.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's so nice, those big off-road boards.
All right, let's move on. The best looking enclosed electric bike car yet isn't going to make it.
This is a sad one. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of episodes with stories like this recently. There's a company called PodBike. They were out of Norway, and they made something called the Free Car, which, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people agreed, this was sort of the best looking, most professional looking electric velomobile out there. A lot of these enclosed electric bikes or electric quadricycles, in this case, because it has four wheels, look a little bit sort of thrown together senior design project like kind of prototypey, but the pod bike, or what became known as the free car, was really really nicely done. The industrial design was great. It really looks like an actual product, and they did produce it. They For a couple years now they've had very low volume production to get this thing out there, and as a basically four-wheeled electric bike car, it was great. You could ride it in the rain, you don't get wet. If it's really cold out, you're in sort of like a enclosed bubble that'll keep you warm. I'm not sure if it had a heater or not, but at least your own heat stays inside of it. You're not like in the slipstream. But unfortunately, like most low volume production, expensive micromobility products, or any product for that matter, it was tough to make the finances work. And they just announced that they are closing shop. I'm not sure how many of these they produced. They did deliver in a couple countries. I think Germany and Norway were both getting low volume deliveries, but it doesn't appear that there's any sort of savior coming to buy up the company yet. And so I'm not sure we're going to see any more of these free cars out there, which is just so unfortunate because so many people say like, man, what would be great is if I could just, ride my e-bike in the rain and the snow and, not get splashed and stuff. And this is the answer to that. Now, of course, there are disadvantages of velomobiles. They're somewhat less visible because you're so low. It's basically like a recumbent trike, or in this case, quad. They're also super expensive. Like when they first started this 4 or 5 years ago, they were aiming for around $5,000, which is, not cheap, but in the realm of, what a good e-bike costs, or from a high quality maker. Over the years, that price went up, and then I think the higher end models before they closed here were at like $12,000-13,000. So at that point, like, it's just not in the equation for most people. It becomes like a rich person's plaything, which, if that's sustainable, then great. Like, it's cool to see that stuff out there. It's got to be expensive in the beginning to drive the innovation, and then eventually prices come down. Like, I get it, but it still has to be able to support itself during that period. Like, Tesla had to be able to sell enough Roadsters to get to the Model S
Right.
and then the
To
Model 3.
right.
So in this case, it just wasn't sustainable at those prices, and this is what happens, which is just a shame to see.
Yeah, I have my own ideas about these kind of things, because not only do they, kind of shelter you from rain and cold and whatever, but like the efficiency, like even from, going from a recumbent bike to a velomobile with the same chassis and the same, like just a normal person can pedal, 40 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So like the amount of power required, the aerodynamics makes the power required to keep this thing at speed so low. I just have to believe like there's somebody who can get something like this to scale just for, the energy savings alone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a reason that like a rocket is shaped like a rocket and not like a person
Right.
because it slips through the air a lot better. And that's
Right.
exactly what this thing does. Like, you're right, it's so efficient. You save so much energy, you go so much quicker, and it's there. I mean, there's so many advantages to these kinds of designs. It's just unfortunate how expensive they are to make. Like, just that bubble, I assume that's like an acrylic bubble, probably cost what a cheap e-bike costs to make.
Right. And of course, obviously, if you can scale that, then it becomes a little bit more reasonable. But like getting those things to scale is the hard part.
Yeah, yeah, and I just don't know if there's a way to do it. Like, we've seen so many companies try this, even the ones that were somewhat more affordable, the Elves and the Pebbles,
Hmm.
because they were not as high-end looking. They weren't as nicely molded. There was a lot
Right.
more of production that could be done like on a workbench, a lot of flat panels. Even
Hmm.
those couldn't make it in the end. So I just don't know if there's a path forward for this type of vehicle. Unfortunately, I would love to be wrong.
Yeah. Same. I mean, as engineering people, like you're always thinking about like, all right, how much power is required to keep this thing going a certain speed? Like it's so it's so much more economical to cut through the air versus just what you call a meat flag, uh, and there just has to be a way to kind of make that equation work. The physics first principles of like, all right, make it inexpensive to move this thing forward, and then all of a sudden it's interesting. Like, maybe there's a way to like make a train car that can store 30 of these. So like these are last mile cars or something like that. Like it's just, there's got to be a solution. There is a solution to this, and we just haven't found it yet. I have to believe that.
I like that outlook. Yeah, it's there. We just have to find it
Yeah, hopefully. Anyway,
in one of the parallel universes. There are already people riding these around.
yes, in some parallel universe, there's like these are last mile vehicles and there's automated trains that are taking these everywhere. It's all great. All right. Royal Enfield's Flying Flea electric motorcycles launching early next year.
I'm really excited for this one. Royal Enfield, an Indian motorcycle maker, is becoming an electric motorcycle maker with their Flying Flea line. I was at the global launch of this new line last November at the EICMA Milan Motorcycle Show. We didn't know exactly when it was coming. People were guessing early 2026, and that's exactly what they've recently announced. Is that's when these bikes are first going to launch. They didn't say the exact markets. I assume it's going to launch in India first, but it very much seems like this is designed for export. It's not one of their India only bikes, and it's very exciting to see. Partly just because it looks so different than what we've seen from so many electric motorcycle makers. Royal Enfield, if you're not familiar, they very much have a retro aesthetic. They haven't really updated their designs in decades, which is great and kind of like what they're known for because it works and a lot of people like that retro design. So when it came time to build an electric motorcycle, it was an interesting design challenge because on the one hand, almost every electric motorcycle out there is either fairly futuristic because you're just using new technology and you're trying to aim for like a young market, or it sort of takes a general don't offend anybody, but don't take any big risks with the design either, like zero motorcycles, for example, which is just sort of a not a high design, just like a very simple street bike sort of setup that doesn't ruffle any feathers, but doesn't wow anybody in the design department either. And so Royal Enfield stuck with the vintage sort of design legacy that they've had for so many years, and I think it really works. We've got that really cool girder fork. We've got that really cool vintage saddle. I don't know how comfortable it'll be, but it looks awesome. But what we don't have yet, and we're getting closer and closer to launch, are really any tech specs. At the launch, they were very tight-lipped. We don't know anything about power. We don't know anything about speed, battery capacity, etc. Just from getting up close and looking at the bike, I'm a little bit worried about what the range figure is going to be because the battery compartment is just so small. I'm not even sure if it's wide enough for two sets of 18650s or 21700s like end to end. It might be like single wide like an electric bicycle battery, which is severely limiting to the capacity. I mean, this is obviously going to be an urban bike, right? Like you're not taking this, through the Himalayas. Like it's just not going to
Right.
happen. That's not what they're designing for. But even as an urban bike, if this doesn't have, 30 to 40 miles of range, it's dead on arrival. So, it's got to have some minimum for people to say, like, all right, like I'll keep it in the city, but it'll be fine in the city. So I'm a little worried about that. But otherwise, I'm very excited to hear what the specs are going to be. I'm sure it's going to be capable of at least, 50 miles an hour or so just to be able to handle, the highest of urban streets. I'm sure it's going to be plenty powerful. You're not doing like stoplight racing on an urban motorcycle, so it's going to be fine for the city. I'm just worried about what the range is and how much battery they can fit into that small battery compartment.
Yeah, I mean that's the big question. I don't know if you remember, but like when you first posted about this thing, and you were early, and a lot of other sites posted about it, kind of based on your post. I got maybe I don't know, like 4 or 5 different people sending me like, "Oh, have you seen this bike?" And I was like, "Yeah, we posted about it last week." But this is the bike, the design that has people really like chattering about like, oh, I could totally get this bike. It reminds me a little bit of the Saunders Metacycle in that way, where people would see it and they'd be like, oh yes, that is what I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
So
finally something different.
different, but like comfortable. Like I get it. I like this. Like this bike feels like it looks good. It looks like I can ride it. It's very simple, but it's got a great look to it. So I think it's going to be really popular if they make enough of them. Obviously, you hit the nail on the head. Like, what's the battery going to be like? Is it going to be 2 kilowatt hours or is it going to be 10 kilowatt hours? Like, could be anything, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like that, I mean, that's the killer for any electric two-wheeler, right? Is range. Now, bikes, like bicycles, electric bicycles, because they're so low power, they can get away with smaller batteries. Electric motorcycles, as soon as you increase that power, you have to increase the battery, but you run out of space for it. In this case, they're really sort of splitting the difference because it is a smaller, lower power bike. And so maybe they can still get enough capacity, but like when you start throwing out numbers, like when you said 204, I'm looking at it thinking, well, I don't think it can be four, but like it's got to be more than two. So I'm just like, I'm I'm really racking my brain here. Same thing happened with the Livewire Del Mar. Like
Hmm.
based on everything they were giving, but not the battery capacity. I was like using everything I could to like reverse engineer the capacity, and I got it within like 5% in the end. But this is going to be tricky. Like if anyone's familiar with rivets motorcycles, those are I want to say 4 or slightly over 4 kilowatt hours, and that's a big, bulky battery. I mean, the
Right.
battery looks to be about the size of both the green faux tank, the finned portion here, which I think is the actual battery area, and then the little triangle behind it, which is probably where they've got the controller, unless the controller's up in that green faux tank area. So I think, maybe 3, not more than 3.5 kWh. I don't know how they could fit in this.
Yeah, I kind of think of kilowatt hours as juiced uh, batteries,
Oh, that's a
which
good
are
way to, yeah.
kind of, they're significant, like really heavy, uh,
Yeah,
pretty big, and yeah, it seems like that case would not hold more than 3 of those.
yeah. I feel like if you
At
took
the
like a 2-liter soda bottle and like
uh-huh,
you kept it the same size up through the cap, like it didn't have a slimmer neck, that would
right,
be like a kilowatt hour. So how many like 2-liter soda bottles could you fit into this?
right. Yeah, I mean that's pretty accurate, and of course, battery technology is getting better and all that. Although I don't know if India is using the latest technology in batteries. So that's the question that needs to be answered. But as far as looks are concerned, or as form factor is concerned, I think they've hit it out of the park with the Flying Flea here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of excitement built up for this one. Anything,
Yeah.
I'm worried there's too much excitement just in India, and like we're never going to get them.
Well, maybe we need to go on a road trip.
Yes.
All right. One last story before we head to the comment section, which nobody's commented yet at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. If any of the 430 people that are watching now have a comment, now's the time to put it in the spot. And something's wrong with the image on this thing. Let's see if I can refresh.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, how one of the only profitable electric motorcycle companies got there with street legal e-dirt bikes.
This is an interesting story because if you're familiar with the electric motorcycle industry, you'll know there are many companies, well, not many, but there are a handful, but almost none of them are profitable yet, even after many years of operations. But there's one, uh, Stark, which makes the Stark Varg, an electric dirt bike that is also street legal, that has actually shared its finances for the last few months and has shown that they have reached profitability. They had a positive EBITDA for a few months now. Quite positive the last month in April. And that makes them one of the few electric motorcycle companies in the world, certainly in the West, that can say that they've reached profitability. We haven't heard that from Zero. Livewire is part of, well, they're public themselves, they're part of Harley, but even, Livewire itself is public, and we can see in their books that they're just hemorrhaging cash, unfortunately. But Stark has done it. And it's based on a few things here. For one thing, there's been just a huge amount of pent up demand for a high performance, high quality electric dirt bike, especially after Alta unfortunately closed several years ago. There just hasn't been another good alternative. Bikes like the Cake Cock, for example, they looked great, not terribly high performance. More like a really cool exercise in Swedish design. But here we've got Barcelona-based Stark that has the high performance, has a pretty nice design, but is also street legal, so you can take these things out on, or at least their newer version is street legal, so you can take them out on the road. They're also fairly reasonably priced, $13,000. Again, that puts it in line with something like the Cake, but significantly more power, significantly more battery capacity for range, much higher performance. I mean, if you've seen guys doing all sorts of crazy stunts with these things, you'll know what they're capable of. We actually a few months ago we talked about on this podcast how the X Games banned these motorcycles for being too good. Like the gas dirt bikes literally could not compete with them at the X Games because these could do things that gasoline powered dirt bikes simply could not. So the company has come out of the gate with the last couple of years of deliveries with just a beautifully designed, really, really high performance bike and are showing profitability now. Now, I have to wonder because they've only shown a couple months of financials. They are a private company, so they don't have to open anything. They showed us very select financials here. So I have to wonder if some of this is based on reporting or lumping a lot of these pre-orders for their new model into April. There are, accounting, not tricks, but, like methods that can be used to sort of front load, back load whatever orders into certain periods to have, more impressive financial performance for those quarters or for those months. And so, especially since we've only seen a little bit into their books here, I have to wonder if some of that is coming into play. Even if so, though, even if they sort of front loaded the big rush of pre-orders for their new street legal model into April, it still shows significant sales of these bikes. So it's definitely very exciting. And the fact that any company is reaching profitability in electric motorcycles is huge news for the industry when we've got companies like Energica that have gone out of business, Livewire that we're pretty worried about because they're just not performing very well. I mean, the bikes perform great. The sales do not perform nearly as
Right.
well. So there are a lot of companies that are struggling in this space. And so it's great to hear that anyone is profitable, and hopefully, we can learn some lessons from Stark, especially if they open up their books a little further and figure out, what exactly they're doing right and how this can be replicated by other companies. Fingers crossed.
Awesome. All right. Well, no comments this morning, so we can move on.
All right. Well, we'll be excited to have you guys back. Hopefully, more talkative in another 2 weeks for the next episode of the Wheelie Podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in with us, and we will see you again next time.